Okay, so we have now the next installment of Jewish Heroes, and so this week we're actually going to be making up for last week in a sense, because last week was Tisha B'Av, and I want to speak about three amazing yahrzeits from last week: Zayin, Ches, and Tes of Av. Zayin Av is the Nesivos Shalom, the Shalom Rebbe. Ches Av is the author of Kelm, one of the founders of the Muslim movement. And Tes B'Av, Tisha B'Av, is the yahrzeit of the Heilige Chozeh Lublin. Yaakov Yitzchak Horovitz, the seer of Lublin, Talmud of Rebbe Melech Mezhinsk and the Maggid. And so those are the heroes that we're trying to connect with this week. Yes?
The Tisha B'Av and also the yahrzeit of Rabbi Akiva? Or
That's Yom Kippur.
that's Yom Kippur.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with the Shalom Rebbe. This is Shalach Noach Brzezowski, and he's known. He's very, very well known. In fact, you can say he puts Shalom on the map in a sense by his amazing Sfarim, his amazing set of Sfarim called Shalom, Nesivos Shalom, and it's unique. It's unheard of. The success that these works of Nesivos Shalom has is something unheard of. That its popularity in every branch of Judaism, whether you're Shalom or Hasidic, not Shalom, or not Hasidic at all, whether you're Haredi or Dati Lumi, there's like Nesivos Shalom can be found in every Mechina K'tam Tzvai, in every Olpana, in every Yeshiva Tichonit. I even saw on one of the websites that I was researching that in some reform yeshiva that there's Hasidic thought of the Nesivos Shalom, and this is like the most widespread way of connecting to Hasidus, and it's really it goes over any lines of just if you're Jewish, you're connected to Nesivos Shalom. So what's unique about the Sefer that made him so popular? So number one is he's a very eloquent writer. In fact, when he was younger, so he was given the job from the Rebbe at the time, from the Beis Avraham, Rebbe from Weinberg, that he gave him the job that after Shabbos it was his job to write down the shmuz, to write down the Divrei Torah that he would say on Shabbos, and they said that they remember him that sometimes after a 3-day yontif, that sometimes after you would have like 2 days of yontif together with a Shabbos, and the Rebbe had said maybe like hours and hours, like at least 6 or 8 different shiurim, and then after Shabbos, then he would sit and he would write down every single shiur and he would bring it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would just go over it, and everything was it was just incredible, his memory and the way he was able to write things very clearly. And number two, he's unique in the fact that there's a certain rabbinic way of writing that sort of makes a lot of books a little bit exclusive. That there's a certain form which is basically doing what they did before you, and it used to be that the way to write was with a lot of abbreviations and a lot of assumed terminology, and he was unique in the fact that he wanted to bring it down. He wanted to write in the modern Hebrew in a way that everybody can understand, with question, answers, paragraphs. Number three, he was an amazing lamdan. He was amazing Talmid Chacham, and in fact, before he was Rebbe, he was only Rebbe for the last 20 years of his life. Before that, he was the Rosh Yeshiva. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of the Shalom Yeshiva, and many great Talmid Chachamim thought very highly of his talents as a Talmid Chacham, just in his way of learning. So the style of the way he would say Divrei Torah is very deep. It's very the questions that he asks are very intellectual. So it's a mix of very intellectual questions that whet your appetite and can pique your interest, and the answers that he gives are very spiritual and very wholesome and very deep and they affect you. It's something it's not just an intellectual answer. He had the chasidus of, I want to tell you something that's going to teach you how to be a better Jew, but he would always involve the intellect as well. Right? Like some people, they're very good at talking to your brain. Some people, they're very good at talking to your heart, and he was able to merge the two very beautifully, okay, in his style. And number three, that he was very well-rounded in the things that interested him. Besides being a Talmid Chacham, so he was, besides being a Chassid, so he was also connected to Musar. And sometimes, and a lot of times, he'll write in the Sefer that I want to give an answer al derech ha'avoda, that al derech, that I want to explain this concept with an idea of to teach you how to be a better Jew. Okay, not just like a spiritual idea, but like Musar. We're going to talk about Musar later when we talk about the Alter of Kelm. But a lot of what he wanted to teach was just very practically that how can you make yourself a better person. That's really the idea of the Musar movement, and so it was very his style and his ideas, and he's obviously just ridiculous genius, and his breadth of his knowledge is amazing, and the amazingness of the ideas that he gives is just so very accessible, and so he's very famous, and it's very unique. It's absolutely it was actually a big schus that he had, that his books became so well accepted. I would say that in the past, he passed away in the year 2000, and I would say that even before that books that everyone learns, I don't know of such a thing. Like there's books that are popular. Like there's books that are popular within Hasidim, but a Hasidic book that got such popularity outside of the world of Hasidim, I don't know of another example of such a thing. So he has the amazing schos of bringing the world of Hasidus to the rest of the world. So is very much thanks to him. So in 1933, so it was a couple of years after I got married, and he moved to Eretz Yisrael. And he moved to Tveria. There's a Shalom Kehila in Tveria. Okay, it's been around for a very, very long time. Eventually, when he became rabbi, he took the Hasidus to Yerushalayim. But until today, that if you've been to Tveria, there's a nice Tveria shul there. Nice little. I don't know how many real Shlonimers are left, but I think a couple. Like probably the guy by the shul is still a Shlonimer there, and so. So he didn't experience the Holocaust. He was saved from the Holocaust by being in Israel, by coming before the Holocaust started. So when he first came to Israel, so he needed a job. So he was already he'd been the head of the yeshiva in the yeshiva of Slonim, which was in Baranovich, and he heard that Chabad is looking for a Rosh Yeshiva. So he went to Tel Aviv to become the Rosh Yeshiva of a Chabad Yeshiva in Tel Aviv. So, and that also tells you a little bit about his open-mindedness, about his well-roundedness, about his ability to not think of himself as like a very local, that my purpose is to make Slonimers, my responsibility is to Slonim, that he looked at himself as a person that is part of the Jewish people. That I need to serve whoever needs me, and so if Chabad needs me, I'll be there for Chabad, and that's something that it's less heard of today. How can I be for Chabad? That makes me a Chabadnik. I'm not one of them. How can I? And he was just beyond this. This idea really, this character trait of his really came out even much more strongly, much later in the 1980s. That in the 1980s, there was a big break in the Haredi world between Rav Shach and the Lev Simcha, the Ger Rebbe, and at that time, so there was a break in the politics. So that Rav Shach was upset with Agudas Yisrael, with the Hasidim. So they broke off into two political parties. And so the Shalom Rebbe, the Nesivos Shalom, so although he was part of the Moatzes Gedolei Torah, board of the rabbinical authorities of Israel. So when they split, so he left. Thank you. So thank you. So he left the Motzei Gedolei Torah, and not only that, but he told his Hasidim not to vote in the elections. He said that if there's machlekes, I want to have nothing to do with it. Okay, he couldn't come to terms with the fact that there would be machlekes, with the fact that they wanted to be different, they wanted to be separate. That it was very clear to him that anybody who believes in Torah values needs to be together. And if you're going to separate, so then how can I be part of a what's it called, a party that is involved in machlekes? And each part is involved in machlekes because neither one wanted to give in. So each one is involved in machlekes, is involved in dispute. So I don't want any of my Hasidim to be, I don't know, he could have said I want to vote for Likud, but he didn't want them to be at all involved in in machlekes. Now, I forgot to mention about a sefer, about Nesivos Shalom. So there's a fascinating story regarding the sefer, and that is that there was an Israeli inspirational speaker that was going to Australia, and so there was a shul near where he needed to speak, and so on the flight, so he wasn't sure yet what he's going to speak about when he gets to the shul in Australia, and meanwhile he dozes off, and he dreams, and he has a dream, and in his dream there's this very, very respectable looking person with a long white beard that he doesn't recognize, and he's staring at him, looking him deep in the eyes, and he's telling him a Dvar Torah. He's telling him this idea in the parsha, and the question, another question, and then an idea, and how they answers the question, and he gives different examples, and a whole Dvar Torah, and he, unusually, when he woke up, he remembered vividly every detail of this dream. He remembered every detail of what this old man had told him, and so it was good. So we decided, okay, that's a cool idea. I think I know what I'm going to talk about. And so when he gets to the shul in Melbourne the next morning, so there's a certain shtibel, and there's a sefer on the table, and it says Nesivos Shalom, and he opens up the sefer randomly, and he starts reading, and he doesn't believe what he's reading, that this is the exact Dvar Torah that this old man had told him in the dream, and he was just really freaked out. And so he goes over to the Rav of the shul, and he says, "Are you familiar with the sefer?" Yeah. Is he alive? He said, "Yeah, he lives in Yerushalayim." He said, "Oh my gosh, this is insane." Okay, he told him the whole story, and he didn't know what to do with it. And so a couple of days later, so there's a Shalom chassid that he finds, that's also collecting money or something in Australia, and he tells him the story. And so the Shalom chassid gets back to Yerushalayim, and he tells the Rebbe, and the Rebbe tells him that I would really like to meet this person. So he gets the message back to this speaker, and he calls up to the Gabbai of the Rebbe, and he makes an appointment, and he gets in, and so he sits down. He says very warmly, "I heard you had a dream about my sefer," and he tells him the whole story, and he asked him a couple of details about the dream, and he says, "And tell me something. When you opened up my book, did you open up to the first page, or you opened up randomly?" And he said, "I opened up randomly." I said, "Wow, okay, and that's what I want to know. I'll tell you why I care so much, because when I published the sefer, so I wasn't sure what I should do. It's very common in many Sfarim, so it's common to, before you publish something, to ask for letters of approbation from different Rabbanim around, and so I wasn't sure. I felt embarrassed, to ask Rabbanim to, who am I that they should give a letter of approbation to me? I feel what if they feel bad, and they don't really want to give me a haskama, and they just, like I don't want to bother them. I'll just publish. So, but I wasn't sure. I didn't really do it with a full heart, but it said that I'm not going to publish any haskamas, any letters of approbation to my book, and I wasn't sure if I made the right decision. But if you were being told my Torah from the heavenly Beis Medrash, so then I can rest assured that in heaven they have a letter of approbation for my sefer. Okay. So that's actually a pretty cool story, and it certainly complements the fact that the sefer Nesivos Shalom has had this unheard of popularity that is completely crossing over all the walls of what it usually, of where Torah usually gets. Okay. Now, he was very, 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 very dedicated to his students. For most of his career, before he was Rebbe, he was the Rosh Yeshiva, and he was very involved in the students. And in fact, he wrote a sefer about chinuch, about how a Rebbe needs to care about his students. Chanuch l'nar al pi darko, how you can't make your educational system into a cookie cutter system. You have to make sure that everybody gets the kind of direction that they need for their personal growth. I read an interesting story told by Rabbi Shua Liff, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Jik, and that he once met the Shalom Rebbe when he was staying in Telstone, and he was telling him about his yeshiva, and the Shalom Rebbe told him that you have to know that every single student is a diamond. That you have to know that when you open your yeshiva, you have to know that anybody that comes to yeshiva, you have to know, and you have to treat them like a diamond. And a diamond, so sometimes diamonds get dirty. Sometimes diamonds need polishing. And sometimes you can have a diamond that's just so dirty that nobody wants to bother with it. And you need to find the right machanech, the right educator, the right rebbe that is willing to get dirty, is willing to go into the mud, to be able to dust off, to clean off this beautiful diamond. But it's worth it. But it's always worth it. And this was his educational theory, his educational philosophy, that not to give up on anybody, and know that nobody is not worth your time, nobody is a goner, and nobody is like never going to come back, and he really believed that everybody, that if you have patience, then if you know how to crack the code, then you can get to anybody, and there's no such thing as a bad kid. Rav Lev, so he writes that a couple of times that the Shalom Rebbe would call him my friend, and he would say, Rebbe, I want to be a chassid. I don't like the Rebbe calls me my friend. So the Rebbe told him that no, to be a chassid of mine is a shver arit. It's hard work to be a chassid. I expect a lot from my chassidim. So you're better off. I demand a lot from my chassidim. You're better off being my friend. And so, but he would. I called him. He every time he didn't give up. He tried to. No, I want to be a chassid. He didn't. He said, I prefer that you're my friend. So he had a tremendous love of Eretz Yisrael. He never left Eretz Yisrael after he came in 1933. At one point, the doctors, for his health, so they wanted him to leave. They thought it would be good to go to the mountains, to go to to the Alps, and he said, Mela, if you would tell me that there's an important doctor that needs the certain surgeon, that the only person that's good at doing the surgery is somewhere, but you're telling me but the air that I know, you can't tell me about air. I know that the air of Israel is the best air in the world. So you're mixed up. If you think that I need to go to the Alps for the air, so then, my dear friend, you're making a mistake. And so he refused to leave Eretz Yisrael just for the good air of the Alps. He was very connected to the Kotel, In fact, once before he came to Yerushalayim, when he was still living in Tveria, so we were going to Kavaracha, and then on the way back from Kavaracha, so some of the Hasidim said that maybe on the way back from Kavaracha, maybe we should stop by the Kaisel. So he said no, the Kaisel it's inappropriate to go to the Kaisel just on the way back. So if you're going to the Kaisel, so you have to make a separate trip to the Kaisel. You don't go to the Kaisel like on the way. It's like if you're like you're going to to visit your parents, and like you say like, oh, I was visiting my friends, so I decided I'll stop by. It's like that's like, really, you only visit us because you're visiting your friend? So like he said that it's not appropriate to go to the Kaisel because like it's on the way, because the Kaisel is so holy that it's not appropriate to just go on the way. He was very moved, was very affected by the 6-day war and the fact that we got the Kaisel, and in Hasidus Shlanim until today. So they don't tachnun on Yom Yerushalayim, and it's like the which is unique in the Hasidic world, in the Haredi world, to have any celebration of Yom Yerushalayim. But he was he didn't really care what other people do. He didn't really care what other people say. So when the Holocaust came, so he was very broken, obviously, especially when the news came that the entire Baranovich had been captured, which means that the entire Shlanim Hasidus had been murdered. The thousands of Hasidim that were in Europe, that there was nobody left from them. He was very broken from that. That inspired him to stop being a Rosh Yeshiva for Chabad, and to open up a Shlanim Yeshiva in Tveria. Okay, he realized that at that point that he needs that the legacy of Shlanim needs to continue, and so he decided that we need to open up a Shlanim Yeshiva, okay, and to rebuild from the ashes, and he told this Rav Liv that Rav Liv was telling him that like we don't have a lot of students, so he told him, he said, don't worry, when I started my yeshiva I had 2.5 talmidim. So he asked, that's what 2.5 talmidim. He said, yeah, two guys that like basically got what I was saying, and one guy just everything went over his head, but we started, and I invested in them, and I knew that this is the future. This is the future of something big, and that's all it takes. So that's number one. That he was inspired by he said that the words that he said were that there's nothing that we can do to save the bodies, but we have to do whatever we can do to save the souls. Okay, meaning that we can't, that the people being killed, that there's nothing we can do from Israel to save them, but what we can do is to make sure that their legacy lives on. Okay, and that's what he was doing, to make sure that the legacy of Stalin is not going to end, and he made sure to teach the melodies that he remembered from Baranovich, and to tell the stories of the Rebbes of Slonim, and he was making sure that the legacy is not going to die. And like because they had him, because he was the right hand man of the Beis Avram of the Slonim Rebbes, so through him things were not going to die. Number two, and this is also very unique in the Haredi world, specifically in the Hasidic world, and that is that he made a point of the fact that the Holocaust cannot be forgotten in our society. Okay, and that's and we know that in Israeli society, so there is a day for Yom HaShoah, but many Haredim don't like associating themselves with anything that just the state of Israel decides that this is the day to do something, so they don't really connect to Yom HaShoah. Like, why should we listen to a bunch of atheists? So most Chavedim say, okay, we don't do Yom HaShoah, and that's it. But instead, what he did is that he made that the yahrzeit of the Rebbe, which was Vav Cheshvan, the day that the Rebbe of the Beis Avram was murdered. So instead of just making a regular Tish for the Hilula of the Beis Avram, so what he would do was that every Vav Cheshvan he spoke about the Holocaust in general, and he spoke about the need to perpetuate the memory of the Holocaust. That everybody should know exactly what happened, that to never forget, and that every Jew needs to put aside a day to make a legacy of everything that happened, of everything that was lost, everything that we can take from this. And they put together all of his shiurim, all of this shmuzin that he would give on Vav Cheshvan, and during his lifetime they put it together in a chaveret called Haruga Alecha, and it was they put together his a whole theology of how a believing Jew deals with the Holocaust, and they put it into a whole book, a whole pamphlet. So he was unique of Hasidic Rebbes, that they were so outspoken about the fact that we need to make a big deal about the Holocaust, and I think it's really amazing. It's really very important. And he was of the opinion that the Holocaust is something that has never existed, something so horrible in Jewish history, and it's something which is beyond the regular numbers and the regular concepts of suffering that we've ever seen. And we've talked about this different times, about the different approaches within Jewish thought of how to deal with the Holocaust. And he sided with the Lubavitch Rebbe. I mean, he can't do it himself, obviously, but about the fact that we can't understand. We should not try to understand, and this is just going to be a huge question mark forever and ever. And he felt that it was inappropriate to think. He said the Satan himself could not possibly think of anything, could not dig up any sin which could possibly justify such suffering. So it's incomprehensible to try to go there, to try to explain that the Holocaust was somehow a response to something that we did, is just completely impossible. So therefore, because it's impossible for us to understand, so it was important for him to teach us that we shouldn't try to understand, and it's really beyond comprehension. Okay, so this is the son of Rabbi Shalom Bozovsky, and he was Baruch Hashem, he was a big mechanech and an amazing leader. So Chozeh Yagen Aleinu. Okay, the next tzaddik that we're trying to connect with tonight is the altar of Kelm. And the altar of Kelm. This is the Talmud of Rabbi Salanter. Interestingly, that when he first came to Rabbi Salanter, so I don't know what this means exactly, but it says that he came to Rabbi Saul to not to make fun of him, but to see what it is, to see what because he knew that it wasn't for him. His name was, by the way, Rav Simcha Zissel Breda. Later in life, he changed his last name to Ziv. And that's because he had opponents that tried to close his yeshiva, and they succeeded in closing the yeshiva. And the way that he was able to escape from the authorities was by changing his name. And so from some point in his career, so his last name became Ziv, and his children took on the name Ziv as well. So Simcha Zissel Ziv, Simcha Zissel Breda. So he was niftar on Ches B'Av, passed away in 1898, and so he came to Rabbi Salanter with the intention to just make fun of it, to just see why they're wrong, and he just heard one shmuz from Rabbi Saul, and he was taken. He was bought. He could never leave, and he spent an entire year there, and he became the next leader of the Muslim movement. And so And the word Musar, we spoke about this a little bit when we learned about Rabbi Yochanan Levavitz. So the word Musar means a harness. So the concept of Musar is complete self-control, and that is what the Musar movement really prides itself in. And he, of all of them, it was unreal. The self-discipline that he had. First of all, he adapted the sleep schedule of the Vilna Gaon, which means that he would sleep 5 times in a course of 24 hours, each time for a half an hour. So he slept 2.5 hours every 24 hours in 30-minute intervals, and he wouldn't allow himself to spend any more time than that sleeping, and he was scared of wasting time. He was mamish scared of wasting time. He thought that the most precious thing that we have is time. The most precious thing that we have is life, and to even one moment that it should go to waste, and like to sleep more than is absolutely necessary. So he considered that wasting, and so he was very, very strict upon himself that he only slept for so little. And the greatest message that he had for his students, the greatest thing that he had was self-restraint and control, order, seder. Being an organized person was one of the most things that characterized the Kelm yeshiva. The Kelm yeshiva, by the way, it wasn't yeshiva in the regular sense. Like most yeshivas that you come to learn Gemara, in the Kelm yeshiva, it wasn't about learning Gemara. It wasn't about learning texts. It was about how to become a real Jew, how to become a servant of Hashem. And like people would come already knowing the entire Torah, but they wanted to learn how to become real Jews. And it was very, very tough. It was a very elitist kind of environment, and it's very, very strict. Like there was no such thing as being a minute late for davening. There was the coming a minute late. That's nothing. There was the instructor. He demanded such a level of self-control from his students that you would not move your smallest finger if not for the right reason. Okay, there's a Rav Lapian. So he was the Rav in Kfar Hasidim. So he learned by the Alter of Kelm. So once he was waiting for a bus in Kfar Hasidim, and the bus came very, very late. He was in the very, very hot sun, and the bus was taking like an hour before it came, and there was a noise. There was a noise in the road, and he looked up to see if it was the bus, and so he said to his assistant, to a student, that in Kelm, for doing such a thing, I would have been punished. Because like, why are you looking up? Like, do you think the bus is going to come faster if you look up? Like what? You do things impulsively. You just move freely. Like, so there's another story that people that recorded that in Kelm itself, everyone was learning, and there was some huge like noise outside, and there was one student that looked up to the window to see what happened, and he was suspended from yeshiva for a week. He was suspended from yeshiva for a week for looking up because there was a noise outside. Okay, it was like a police school. It was the amount of self-control that he required from his students is something like beyond our comprehension. It's really, 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 really out there. And like we said, that he insisted on being very, very orderly. He also insisted on being very, very neat, very, very proper. He said that being masudar on the outside is a sign of being masudar on the inside. Like being organized on the outside is a sign of being organized on the inside. And so he insisted that everybody you don't walk outside if your shirt's wrinkled. You don't walk outside if you're not tucked in. If you look like a shlump. If you look like you're not put together. That being put together is just the aleph base of being a human being, of just being a bench. And so there's a crazy story that that once he saw that one of the students, so he threw his shoes when he was like going to bed. He threw his shoes like randomly next to his bed, and like it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't next to each other. It wasn't right next to his bed, whatever. And so he heard about this, and he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that a student of his would just haphazardly just throw his shoes, and that you think it's okay to just throw your shoes. You don't realize that your shoes have to be in the proper place in the organized fashion next to your bed, like, and so he gave so he spoke for 2 hours the next day in yeshiva about how important it is to be organized, and so there was a stranger that came that and when the Alter Kelm, when he would give a shmuz, so he would use like a sing-song kind of voice, and like the way the people today use by levayas sometimes, like by eulogies, like by funerals, they use like a sing-song kind of voice, and so he would always use the sing-song kind of voice, and like some outsider from Kelm, so he came, and he thought this was the most hilarious thing, that he was giving a hesped for 2 hours about the shoe. So, and the news got back to him, and so then from then on he insisted that nobody not from yeshiva is allowed to listen to the classes. That he realized that this is like too lofty for the simpletons, and so if you're not one of us, then you're not going to understand what we're talking about. So there's another similar story that he once they were stuck outside the building, and like somebody forgot the key, and so one of the students, so he jumped over the gate and he opened it from the inside, and the Alter Kelm was so just like shooken up that he said, how could you possibly jump over the gate? You don't realize that when there's a gate, that means that you're not supposed to go? How could you have the audacity to jump over a gate? A gate is about not going. He was that was the idea of just like doing whatever it takes. That was against the very, very fabric of his that we don't go against the rules. We don't, and so he was a very, very very strong person, and this is something that this level of self-control, this level of holding yourself to a very, very a standard of emes, standard of truth, the standard of that I refuse to do the slightest thing of what is the most straight way of living life, and I don't care, that's my level of that's my value, that's my morals, and by no means am I going to forfeit my values a tiny bit. So it's really very like, even if a lot of these examples are completely not relevant to us, but the concept of the self-control is so awesome, and like to recognize that we could be in control. We're so it's so easy to be easy on ourselves than to just like whatever, and like to know that no, there's such a thing as a human being that is in complete control, and it's very empowering to be able to know that I'm the boss. Is really a very empowering thought. So obviously with many grains of salt, but that idea of being orderly, of being in control, is a very beautiful idea. I want to share with you three. He writes three ideas, three messages about learning Torah, that he felt that it's important to anybody that learns Torah needs to know these three things. Number one, that it's critically important whenever you learn Torah to be emotionally connected. Okay, what does it mean to be emotionally connected? To care. That this is something that I care about. That this is not just something that I'm learning with my brain. That there's something that it matters to me. Okay, if what you're learning, if the Torah that you're learning is not something that matters to you, if it's not something that you care about, so then then there's something very, very basic which is missing in your connection to Torah. Okay? So that even if it's something which is actually not relevant to your everyday life, but the fact that it's Torah should matter to you. Right? Like just as example, somebody once explained to me when I was a kid that I think he said this in the name of Rav Hutner, that when if somebody would explain something incorrectly, somebody would say that the pshat in the Rambam is like this, and that it's really like, and you really felt it was the other thing, so that he would get upset, and he would really like somebody asked him like calm down, like okay, so you disagree, like why are you so upset? So he said, no, you don't understand. It's like he's saying lashon hara on my mother. That it's like you're defaming my mother, like to say that this is what that the Rambam is trying to say, when that's not, I know very well that's not what the Rambam is trying to say. So like I feel so connected to the Torah, I feel so connected to the Rambam, that for you to misinterpret the Torah is like saying lies about my mother. Okay, that's step number one. Step number one is that anything you're learning, so you need to be emotionally connected. And if you're not emotionally connected, then there's something very basic missing. Number two, that whenever you're learning, so it's critically important to ask yourself that what did I think before I sat down to learn, and what do I think now that I've already learned? Okay? That, in other words, what did I take from this? That how did this make me wiser? How did this make me into a different person? That if nothing that I think has changed based on what I learned, so basically I wasted my time. So the second advice for learning is that if when you're learning you don't ask yourself that did I change anything in what I think and how I think, so then I'm not connected to Torah. Okay? And number three, the third advice for learning Torah is that you should always delve beyond the superficial level of what you're learning and always look for the essence. Okay, meaning that in anything that you're learning, so there's the outer layer, there's the external layer of what you're learning about, and that's the facts. That like this is what you're supposed to do. This is what the story that happened. Whatever it is, but there's always the essence. Okay, there's always that beyond the actual detail. So then there's the reason why that detail is true, and there's that what actually are we talking about here, and this is something that makes everything much more real. Like this actually is something that enables you to be emotionally connected to what you're learning. That because when you're talking about superficial things, so then it's really hard to be emotionally connected. But when you realize that there is no such thing as Torah, which is just superficial, that anything in Torah has something essential. So the definition of learning Torah requires that we delve beyond the superficial meaning of anything that we're learning, whether it's a Gemara, whether it's a Maimer Chasidus, whether it's a Pasuk, whether it's a Rashi, that anything that we're learning, so there needs to be that the kernel of truth, the kernel of essence, the real message from which this detail happens to come. And this is a very, very important approach, that like to realize that there is nothing which is superficial, there is nothing which is simple, there is nothing which is boring, and everything is really very, very deep. Okay, so this is how he educated. This is how he brought up his students, and his students. Even though he didn't have a lot, he didn't have a lot of students. He was like I said, he made it like somewhat of an elitist kind of yeshiva, but his students were students that mamish lifted up the world. Students were the Alter of Slobodka, the Alter of Nevardek, Rabbi Naftali Trapp, Rabbi Lapian. Think about this kind of school that like if you move, you're kicked out of school. It was people that came knowing that I want to become something greater, and he realized that it's not going to be for everybody, but the people that I'm going to get, I'm going to be able to really make them into something huge. So this is somewhat like a glimpse from a world that no longer exists. This concept of this amazing self-control, this concept of being so hard on himself and so demanding of his students, that is something that it's really hard for us to imagine nowadays. But to know that it exists, to know that there is such a thing, is something that can inspire us, and something that can really like remind us that we don't have to be so easy on ourselves, that we could really achieve greatness. Okay, so that's the Zechus Yogan Leino. That is the Simchas Yisrael Breda, the altar of Kelm. And last but not least, so I want to speak a little bit of Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchak Horovitz, the Chozeh in Lublin, the holy Chozeh in Lublin. So could you give me some more water, please? So the Chozeh, so he was a student of Rabbi Elimelech, like you said, and there's many stories. The reason why he's called Chozeh means the seer, that he had a very, very open Ruach HaKodesh, that he was able to see things, he would just look at you and he would know everything about you. Okay? So he was always teaching about Avos Yisrael. He was always one of his things he learned this from the Baal Shem Tov, was to be Makar of the Pshutei Am, to be Makar of the simple peasants, and because of this custom, so he had opponents, and within his Chasidus, so Simcha ben Psishcha and the Yiddish Kaddish, so they actually broke off from his Chasidus because they wanted a higher level of like people who are allowed to be close to the Rebbe. Like they wanted the Chasidus where like you deserve to be close to the Rebbe, and they didn't appreciate that he was just like besties with people that could barely read, and so they didn't approve of his like Chasidus, which is meant for just loving every single person. There's a lot of stories surrounding him. He himself was an interesting person. He had a custom that he would sniff tabak during davening. He would sniff tobacco during davening, and so somebody once asked him, like, Rebbe, like, do you think it's really appropriate that you're taking tobacco during davening? So he told him, I'll answer you with a story. That there was once a king who was walking in the street, and he heard this old man with a violin, and he thought that there was a very beautiful playing. So he said, I want this man to play for me in my palace. And so this old man with a violin. So like he started playing in the palace like he was ordered, and every day. So like he was a poor guy, so he didn't have the best violin, and so almost every day one of his strings would snap, and it would take a lot of time for him to fix the string. And so one day one of the officers told this old man, said, this is not okay. You're this like treason, like what you're doing. That you're one of the king's musicians. Like, how dare you come to the king with this messed up violin, and you have to waste his time, and he has to wait for you to fix your strings. Like, this is not okay. You have to show respect to the king. So the old man said that, listen, like, the king has lots of musicians, but even though he has lots of musicians, he came to me, and he says that I like you. So if he says I like you, so it means he likes me with my messed up violin. So that means that you don't have to worry. That if he wants me, then that means he likes me as I am. And so the Chozeh Lublin says that the Hashem, he has all of his angels. He has lots of. He's not lacking people to serve him, and so, but he still wants me. And I don't know why he wants me. I don't know why he thinks I'm anything special. But if he wants me, so he wants me as I am. So this is it's a pretty deep story about sometimes about being true to ourselves, about being about self-acceptance. Okay, obviously you have to know when this is the appropriate thing to say and when this is we're not going to say that Hashem loves me as I am, with my waking up at 3 in the afternoon every day, and with my going to bars all night until obviously this is he obviously felt that this is the way that he's able to daven best and whatever, but without getting too much into the details of the story, but leave it to the fact that he had his idiosyncrasies, and he was an interesting person, and he didn't care what people think, and he didn't care about conforming. There's a story that Shlomo would tell, that the ones before Yontif, so the Chozeh Lublin needed a haircut, and so all the Hasidim were lining up to who's going to be able to be the barber for the Chozeh Lublin, and so all of his biggest Hasidim who were also barbers, so they started, and everyone. So when it was his turn, so he came, and as soon as he started snipping, he was just like shriek out in pain, and so the guy said no, next, and everyone, all these big tzaddikim, so they would the Chozeh didn't like something about this Hasidim. He was you could see on his face he was mamish literally in physical pain from these Hasidim. They were so embarrassed, and so all of the everybody was online. They're scared of what's going to happen when it's there. They're trying to do tshuva and trying to become better people, and they know that if I'm not holy enough, then I'm going to mamish become causing the Chozeh Lublin pain. And so Nebuch, all the Hasidim, nobody succeeds. Everyone that tries to cut the hair of the Chozeh Lublin, it's they see these mamish shrieking in pain. So the Gabayim, they're getting frantic. It's almost Yantiv. So they look in the streets and they see they're looking for barbers. And they see this punk with a bunch of chains and tattoos and whatever, ponytail, and they and he said, "Hey, do you know how to cut hair?" I said, "Yeah, of course I know how to cut hair." He said, "Look, I need you. The Chozeh Lublin needs a haircut, dachuf. So come." So this guy, he starts cutting. He starts for the Chozeh Lublin, and as soon as he starts cutting, so the Chozeh says, "Wow!" It's the most amazing, the most pleasant experience, and all the Hasidim are "What?" until he finishes. So he gets the whole haircut, and he says, "Wow, that was the most amazing haircut. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough." He pays them very well, and the Hasidim they're really, really upset, and they go up to this guy after he leaves and said, "What's your story? What did you do?" He said, "I don't know. I'm just a guy." He said, No, you must have done something amazing." He said, "Oh, here, take a look at this." He pulls up his shirt. His back is full of scars. So he said, "What's that?" So he says, a couple of weeks ago, so I was walking down the street, and I see this family that everyone's crying, and I asked him, "Why are you crying?" So he says, "Well, my husband, so he owed a lot of money that there was some kind of theft, some burglary, and they decided that my husband was the one who stole the money, and so they're beating him, and I'm scared they're going to kill him." So he thinks to himself, "Listen, I don't need. How much is my life important? This guy, he has a family, he has kids. I'm strong. I can probably take it. He's weak. Probably." So he says, "Listen, guys, you made a mistake. I'm the one who stole your money. Okay, I'm sorry." So they don't care. So they let the guy free, and they tie him to the tree, and they say, "Okay, we're going to give you 100 lashes," and and by 20 lashes, he's I don't know how I'm going to survive this, and so he says, I cry out to Hashem. He says, "Hashem, please just help me survive this. I didn't do this for myself. I did this for you. So just let me live through this." Next thing I knew, so I passed out, and when I woke up, it was over. So maybe your rabbi, maybe he saw this act in his Ruach HaKodesh, and that's why he allowed me to be his barber for Yantiv. So this is this is the message of the story is the message of Nesivos nefesh, of how holy you become when you're able to really to forfeit your physical comfort to save another Jew, and this is really it's certainly one of the greatest things that the Chozeh of Lublin was leaving for us. There was once another story of his Ruach HaKodesh is that there was once one of the like the most hated Jews in Lublin. So he passed away, and the person that was always just like insulting people and always just yelling people and always he was the biggest miser, and he was like everybody hated him, and he wasn't even like he wasn't even part of the shul. He didn't even like he wasn't religious, and he was just like all around just the worst guy in Lublin. And so he passed away, and the Chozeh of Lublin says that get ready, we're going to this levaya. And so so they're shocked. So he goes out. All the Hasidim goes out, and they have like mamish a huge levaya. And so they asked him what's going on. So he said, I'll tell you the story. That it's true, this guy that everybody hated him, but 20 years ago, so there was a story that Rav Nachum in Chernobyl, okay, the Ma'arinim that we learn every Sunday night. So there's somebody like said lashon hara about him to the authorities, and they made a lie that he had killed somebody, and he was going to be put to death. And so we're trying to do everything to free him. And we found out that there's only one person that can rescind the death sentence from Nachum and Chernobyl, and a certain minister that he has the right to rescind this the verdict of the court. But we needed like somebody that could get to him, somebody that had in with this guy. And so we're trying to figure out who has connections to him, and like nobody has connections. And then somebody says, wait, there is one guy that has connections to this minister, but like he's not going to help you. He's not going to help you, and he's this guy. And so I went to him myself. And I said, listen, that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. That I need your help. You need to save Rav Nachum of Chernobyl, and the way you need to do it is you need to get this minister to sign that he rescinds the death sentence. And so they get some lawyer to write up the legal papers. That all that's left is the signature. And so he says, "Well, how am I supposed to go? I know the guy, but I know this minister, but I can't go to him today because he's having a big party. He's going to be mamish drunk, and he's going to. It's dangerous for me to go. If he doesn't like me, then he could kill me." So I told him, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. That this is the one time we need you. And so he says, okay. Like, I realize that I might not come out of this alive, but I'm going to do this. And so he went, and after the party was gone, and he says, Sir Minister, I know that this is so inappropriate, and I'm so sorry for bothering you, and I don't blame you if you hate me, and I blame you if you kill me, but there's a certain death sentence that was inappropriately sentenced to a Jew, and you're the only one who can save him. Would you please sign on this? And he said, okay, no problem. And he signs it, and he runs away. And so I saw, as the Levaya started coming down, so I saw that the holy soul of Nachum of Chernobyl was coming down to be malav this person. And so of course I wanted to join him, and so that's why he actually deserves such an amazing Levaya. Okay, so regarding the end of his life, and with this we will conclude. So the Chozeh of Lublin wanted very deeply to bring Mashiach, and we spoke about other tzaddikim that wanted to do spiritual means to force Mashiach to come, so to speak, and so the Chozeh of Lublin was one of those, and so he got together a lot of his Talmidim. He got together the Maggid of Koznitz and the Marv Shemesh and Metali Rebshitzer, and so he told them that before Simchas Torah, that if there's going to be a good Simchas Torah, then there's going to be a good Tisha B'Av. Okay, that's what he told them, that we need to like really koch Simchas Torah. If we make a good Simchas Torah, then it's gonna. So they all got ready, and they're all doing their Kabbalistic preparations to make this the Simchas Torah that's gonna mamish bring down the Shefa, bring down the Geula, and they're all getting ready. You know, Simchas Torah has amazing qualities that I saw once that when a yid picks up his foot to start the first dance of Simchas Torah, that does more tikkunim, that does more rectifications in the holy worlds than all of the avodah from the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur. That's just one little dance. The dancing of Simchas Torah has bigger tikkun. It's a huge day. Simchas Torah is an amazing day. So they wanted to use this spiritual opportunity to bring the Geula. So of course, Hashem is bigger than the Chozeh in Lublin. So he foiled his plans. And so the Chozeh didn't know, but maybe he did know, that Erev Sukkot, so the Maggid of Koznitz passed away. In the house of the Marva Shemesh, so another one of his friends, so during the Hakafas, so somebody like threw a rock into the window, and like everything got messed up. In the house of Rabbi Tali Rapshitzer, so there was a fire in his house during Hakafas, so everything got messed up, and by the Chozeh himself, so the Chozeh he knew that the bad side is going to try to stop him. So he told his wife to watch over him, to make sure that nothing happens, like to be a shomeret, to be a guard, that nothing's going to happen to him. And so she was trying her best. Then suddenly, in the middle of he was doing his spiritual things, and then in the middle, so she heard this baby crying outside. So she ran outside the house to see what was going on. And there was nothing there, and she came back, and her husband wasn't in the room, and she was scared. She didn't understand what happened, and so it turned out that he had fallen out the window. And they asked him what had happened, and he said just all of the forces of evil, they attacked me, and they literally, so they threw out the window, and so now there's an interesting caveat, an interesting story over here, that the Misnagdim, his enemies, so they heard that he had fallen out the window, and they thought that he was on the way to dying. And so one of his, disgusting, it's absolutely disgusting, one of the Rabbanim in Lublin, so took a bottle of wine and passed by him. He was on the porch, and he said, "This we're going to make a l'chaim. We're going to make a l'chaim with this wine when you're nifter." And the Chozeh of Lublin told him, he smiled at him, and he says, "When I'm nifter, even water you're not going to drink." When did he die? He died in Tisha B'Av. He knew Baruch HaKodesh that he's going to die in Tisha B'Av, and he was mocking them like you think you're going to have the last laugh. You don't know anything. So this is the. So he was
trying to bring the Mashiach by himself?
With all of his Hasidim, with all his friends, and it didn't work. It didn't work. Hashem is stronger than the Chozeh Lublin, and it wasn't the right time, so it didn't work. So the last story, also regarding Mashiach and the Geula, is a story that also Shlomo would tell, and that is that there was the once I forgot who it was. One of his talmidim was once in a certain tavern in the middle of Europe, traveling, and maybe it was the after of maybe one of his students, and so he was, and there's something he couldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. There was like there was a clock. The clock was just the clock was like hypnotizing him, and it was making this the tick on the tick tock of the clock was just he couldn't sleep, and and like it was really weird, and he was like pacing up and down because he knew he couldn't fall asleep. And so meanwhile, because there was like an old inn, so like the wooden floors like made them, when he was pacing on the wall, was making a lot of noise. So the owner of the inn woke up and he realized that something. So he comes in his pajamas and he says, "Rabbi, is everything okay? Can I get you some tea? Can I get is there something wrong?" So he says, "No, everything's okay. I don't know. I don't something. I can't sleep. Tell me something. Is this like is this clock in the room? Is it yours? Is it yours?" So he says, "Well, I mean, I'm allowed to use it, but it wasn't originally mine. Like, what do you mean?" So he says, "Could it be that this is the clock from the Chozeh Lublin?" So he says, "I don't know. I don't know what Chozeh Lublin means, but is it for the Rav of Lublin, the city, Lublin. Yes, actually, I think the person that gave me this said that he was a grandson of the rabbi from Lublin." So he says, "Oh, now I understand. That this is why I can't fall asleep, because the clock of the Chozeh Lublin is different than all the other clocks in the world. Every other clock in the world, so every time it ticks, so it tells you that that's it. You wasted another minute. You wasted another day. You're one step closer to dying. But the clock of the Chozeh Lublin, so every time it ticks, you know what it tells you? You've just gotten one step closer to Mashiach. You've just gotten one step closer to Geula. So when I hear the ticking of the clock of the Chozeh Lublin, so I'm just so excited. So my soul isn't out to sleep. So this is the mamish, what we need to rewire our brains to be able to have a mentality, to have a perspective that we're walking towards Mashiach, we're walking towards Geula, to reset all of our watches, to reset all of our clocks, and to know that we're on the way. And this was the legacy of the Chozeh Lublin, of trying to doing whatever we can to bring Mashiach, knowing that it's Mashiach is imminent, and that's absolutely the message of his passing on Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av, as we know, is the time that the Mashiach is born. So it's the beginning of the Geula. So Chozeh and B'ezrat Hashem, we should be able to really internalize all of this, really yearning for Mashiach, and really to be able to do whatever it takes, to be able to really know that every step is coming closer to redemption. B'ezrat Hashem. L'chaim.